very special guest. Excited for this conversation, joined by Valerie Jenkinson, the Executive Director of Operators Without Borders. Thank you very much for coming on.
We are delighted to be here.
Yeah, so you are, Operators Without Borders is one of WEF's charities of choice.
Correct.
You're on a short list for us because we have so much admiration for the work you're doing out there to help people with water around the world. Could you talk a little bit about Operators Without Borders, what you do?
Thank you, Travis. Well, we started in 2017, so not that long ago, after Hurricanes Irma and Maria hit the Caribbean. And a friend of mine who was a general manager of the Dominica Water Authority asked for help. And so we didn't start as an organization. I started by going to the Canadian Water and Wastewater Conference, making a presentation, asking for some volunteers from the operator crew, and we did some fundraising, and we sent 3 operators down to Dominica, and in 2 weeks, after 3 months, they got the wastewater treatment plant up and running and restored water to 3 villages.
That's what happens when you send in those pros, those water
That
operator
is
pros.
absolutely.
I love it, yeah.
And so I thought, well, we're onto something here. So we actually, Operators Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders, engineers, it was rather a no-brainer. So we started that, we got a board of directors, we became an NGO in 2019, 2020, we got our charitable status. So we're now a registered Canadian charity, and we have about 60 or 70 volunteers who are operators or water professionals throughout Canada and the United States. And we have 2 missions, 2 mandates. One, go and help water utilities after a disaster to rebuild. And that's our prime. But during COVID, that wasn't happening.
Extra challenging,
couldn't send
sure.
anybody.
Right.
My number one focus is safety of my volunteers. So we couldn't send anybody, but we also started doing training. And that is our second mandate, so it's capacity building. All these incredible volunteers that I have such skills to offer. And so we know, well, having worked in the Caribbean myself in my own company for the last 12 years, I know how little training there is. So we offer all of this training completely free of charge. We've developed 225 standard operating procedures that we're going to launch at the Caribbean Conference next week. We give them away. We have a committee, and all our volunteers will team up with a utility who wants to put in some of these, and we can customize them and help them customize them. So we have the most incredible, dedicated crew that you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, here at WEFTech and watching on WEFTech Live, we have got a lot of people that work in water, obviously, and a lot of operators. I know you're over by our incredible Operations Challenge, talking to all those folks, the people that make the water work, right? Could you talk just a little more about the opportunities for them to get involved? So basically, they would sign up to be a volunteer, and then if there is a disaster or a crisis, there's kind of a call for help?
Exactly. So sometimes we need specialty help in a specific area. In the Bahamas, we needed people who knew sampling, because 50, sort of like what happened in Florida, 15-foot tidal wave came in, but they only operate on wells. 300 wells were salinated. There was no fresh drinking water. You couldn't shower, you couldn't brush your teeth even with this water. So we needed people who had specialty skills in that. But generally speaking, I send out a letter to all the volunteers and say, we're going to be putting teams together, and we have a team lead that goes in who's done this work before, and we work with the WASH group, the Water and Sanitation and Hygiene, that's led by UNICEF, but we are there at the behest of the Water Authority. We are the only charity probably in the world that works only with water utilities and operators. So it's really water utilities helping water utilities, operators helping their counterparts in developing countries.
Oh, that's fantastic. And just the training, so you would be in some of these different communities, they might be interested in getting training so they can better respond to these situations themselves, improve their infrastructure overall, and so you can kind of come in and help?
Operations and maintenance.
Yeah.
So I used to own one of the largest training companies in Canada for water and wastewater operators, so I've donated all of those training courses. It's got 70 training courses, all the manuals, the tests, everything. But we're working really closely with Water Professionals International. 3 weeks' time, I'm off to Africa. We're doing our very first training and certification exam in Africa. It's a pilot test in a little community or a large community called Nakuru. And we're working with Paul Bishop and his crew at Water Professionals International.
Wow.
So this is taking certification to a different level.
Now that you know the full-blown pandemic of COVID is kind of behind, you're able to get back out there now and implement these things you've been kind of scheming for a few years here. It's got to be exciting.
It's unbelievable how much we have grown in the last few years. And if you go to the Caribbean, everybody knows Operators Without Borders now. And I was recently at the World Urban Forum, and I went up to the acting director of GWAPA, the Global Water Partnership Alliance, and I said, I'm Valerie Jenkinson from Operators Without Borders. She said, I know all about you.
Oh, fantastic.
No, it's like, you do?
Yeah. I guess turning from that uplifting conversation to one that's a little more difficult, the war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, I'd like to hear what has happened, how water infrastructure has been impacted there, because I know you've been close to that situation.
Yes, I just spent 6 weeks in Europe working on the Ukrainian situation, and I was working with the Ukrainian water utilities and water operators, and mostly with the Poles. The Polish water authorities have said to me, we need to lead this. The West doesn't understand Putin. They think they can negotiate with him. You cannot negotiate with Russia and Putin. He will just use the opportunity to rebuild. We know this. We are in a good situation to lead this rebuilding effort. So I'm working with them and also with the WASH group in Ukraine. One of our volunteers he's the chair of a subcommittee, so we're working virtually right now on Ukraine. We set the water quality standards for wartime. So we're still producing water, but sometimes we've got a lot of damage to the infrastructure. So we can't meet the normal quality standards that would be expected, but what is safe? We've still got to make sure that we're not sending out bad water.
Sure.
So what should those standards be? So that's what Ian has been working on. We're also part of this consortium that is looking at rebuilding. So when we do that, we want to build back better. And I was lucky enough to have a long meeting with the Director General of the UN Habitat, who works out of Geneva, Dr. Graham Alabaster, and he actually said he loved what we do. He said because when the NGOs go in there, they do fantastic work, but often it perpetrates temporary systems. He said, you're going in and getting the real infrastructure back and running really quickly. He said, that's what we need. He said, because sometimes with what we're doing on temporary systems, we could actually build a new wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
So he's excited to work with us and have our expertise because he's been asked by some of the mayors in Ukraine to look at rebuilding, but we want to make sure not only that we build up better, but we don't go gold-plated because the people have to be able to operate and maintain it.
Sure.
So often you overbuild.
Right. It's obviously a dangerous situation still, as we've even seen just in the past 48 hours or so. Yep. So how is that work conducted? Like you said, I think you're probably consulting with people that are in Ukraine already, the Ukrainians themselves, or people in Poland are talking to people in Ukraine. How's that set up just for, given the situation?
We've put together a consortium and we have a plan to hold workshops for the Ukrainian. We've already provided incident command system training on level 100, and we're going to do more of that. They love the training, so that was volunteered again, and we're going to go right through level 400 is the plan. But we've got this proposal together. We're going to need sponsors and funding to bring people out of Ukraine. Now, we can't bring the men out between 16 and 60. They are fighting. In fact, one of the water utility managers that we were working with, he's no longer the water utility manager. He was sent to the Donbass to fight, and we pray for his safety.
Sure.
So that's the situation we're facing. These guys are repairing their systems in the daytime and providing water and wastewater solutions, and at night they're taking a gun. Our people, we're so spoiled here compared with so many parts of the world.
Yeah.
But we're working with them. We're working, they call them Voda canals, so the water authorities are Voda canals. We're working on the WASH system with the Voda canals. We have meetings that, unfortunately, where I live in Vancouver, at 3 a.m. in the morning, and we have those weekly. So a little tiring, but it's a whole push to rebuild.
Absolutely. Well, Valerie, thank you very much for your work to make water more available and cleaner for everybody around the world, leading these operators. I encourage people to please go to, just Google search Operators Without Borders. You'll get the site. learn how you can contribute, how you can volunteer to this great charity. It is a WEF charity of choice that we're so proud of. Valerie, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank WEF for all your support, because WEF has been one of our great sponsors, so I am so appreciative.
We've got